Welcome to the Broker Growth Accelerator, where we discuss how real estate brokers can accelerate their growth by improving their agent recruiting and retention. I'm Jim Turner, and we're going to discuss real estate brokerage growth tactics with our special guest, who's an expert in the industry. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Jim Turner, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Brokerkit, and I'll be your host today. Today on the show, we're super excited to have Lisa Bowles, who oversees business development at Century 21 Results down in Atlanta, Georgia. Century 21 Results is the second largest Century 21 in the US and number one down in Georgia. She was the top recruiter within Century 21 for 6 years straight. She's been coaching other brokers and recruiters as a recruiting coach. Really excited to have you here today. Welcome to the Broker Growth Accelerator, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm super glad to be here.
Awesome. Maybe let's just start out with some backgrounds. How
Sure.
long have you been in the business? How did you get into real estate and recruiting specifically?
I was a recruiter before I got into real estate. I knew nothing about real estate. So I recruited for many years for heavy civil construction. And then Terry Swanson, our owner broker, got wind that I was a recruiter and he was looking for one. And so he called me and asked me to come in. And that was 8 years ago. And I was the first designated recruiter for the office. You know, most brokerages don't have a designated recruiter. So I was the first one for him and just started recruiting. Just took everything I knew from my recruiting in the outside world. I always refer to it as the outside world because there's the outside of real estate and then there's real estate.
Yep.
And they are so, once you get in, you're in. And so I just took what I learned there and ran with it and then kind of developed my own system and then started sharing it with the rest of the world.
I'm curious because we deal with a lot of people that have their office managers or managing brokers trying to do the recruiting and don't have a dedicated recruiter, as you just mentioned. I did a webinar specifically on the business case for that because I believe if you can get the system down, it has a really high ROI to have a dedicated person or staff helping with that versus just asking the individual branch managers to do it in addition to many other things. How big was the brokerage when you came on as the first dedicated recruiter, and how did that conversation go? And how soon was it clear that there was a strong ROI with having dedicated people focusing on that?
So we were at about 135 agents at the time. And since we have grown, we're at 400, but we're at 400 much higher producing agents. We don't have a whole lot of inactive agents on the roster anymore. What I have found, because I have been very fortunate to be able to talk with so many brokerages across the country and coach them. And I can tell you, if you're not recruiting as a broker, you're dying because it's just too much out there. There's too much retention issues. There's too many people getting out of the business. There's too many people. And agents they know they're independent brokers or they're independent contractors, so that it's too easy for them to, skip around. So what I tell brokers when I'm coaching them is if you're not recruiting, that is the most profitable thing you can do in a brokerage to grow the wealth is to recruit. If it just truly is. Because I can do everything I can as a broker to try to stimulate and motivate my current agents. And I may be able to get 2, 3, maybe even 5 more deals out of them throughout the year. But if I can go and I can bring over a $10 million producing agent, which is a high producing in our area, I've just added 100 transactions to my wealth for the year.
100%. I mean, we believe all businesses, including brokerages, really have a sales funnel and a talent funnel. And we regularly see brokerages that are super detailed in systems and processes around the sales funnel. And then they're running the talent funnel out of a spreadsheet. And they're big brokerages too, right? And it makes sense because they all came up from sales. But I also don't think many brokers understand the ROI of the recruiting side and how quickly it pays for itself because, if you bring on a buyer or seller, maybe you'll sell another deal in 7 years. But if you're bringing in producing agents, you're bringing in recurring revenue and it brings leverage very, very fast. And then we regularly run into large brokerages with that branch model where the branch manager is being asked to recruit, but in addition to many other things like all the onboarding, all the retention activities,
too much.
Deal doctoring, all that. And then we're constantly getting the question, that sounds great. I know we should be doing it. How do I get my managers to do it? And it seems like the brokerages that do have the centralized recruiting where you're either creating leads or appointments for those managers and they're just showing up to the appointments and closing them seems to work like really well.
Mhm.
And we see higher growth. I mean, like maybe comment on that.
Well, it's true. I mean, and that's the frustrating thing about it is that when I am working with these brokers and trying to teach them how to recruit, they're all excited about it, but there's no time. I mean, can we time block? Can we give 10 minutes, or an hour a day?
Right.
Well, I'm
Right.
going to try, but for some reason it falls to the very, very, very lowest rung of
Yeah.
priority. And it makes no sense to me because it is your highest profitability thing you can do in a brokerage firm is bring people in. One of the things that does make it easier is Brokerkit. And I have, if you're not using something to, I mean, it's as easy as I talked to Sally, and in our conversation with Sally, she mentions her daughter is a ballerina. Now, she may not want anything to do with me after our conversation because I'm a recruiter. But if in 2 weeks I find a funny meme and I send her a little thing about a ballerina, we're on a personal level now. And
Right.
well, if I don't have Broker Kit, I don't remember that she has a ballerina. So this is what makes it so crucial. In order to be successful at recruiting, you not only do you have to pick up the phone and make the calls, but you also have to make sure you know every little piece of that conversation you had,
Right.
because that is what you use for the future in your tasks and in your other things that Brokerkit keeps completely organized for you. And that is how you build a rapport, and that's how you get them. That is truly how you get them in a nutshell.
Because how many people are ready to just reply back to that initial email and say, sounds great, sign me up, right? As they say, the fortune's in the follow-up. I mean, you just need to,
100%.
the conversation is just the start of the relationship, right? You need to
Absolutely.
continue on.
And people don't realize that that something is going to happen to that agent. Something is going to happen. Another agent's going to steal her listing, or she's not going to get paid what she thought she was supposed to get paid. Something is going to happen.
Yep.
And if you have continuously followed up in a very positive, non-threatening, non-stalker type of way on a regular basis, and yet they find value in your conversations because either you make them laugh or whatever, they're going to call you first.
And at the
Something
end of the
happens,
day,
they're going to
yeah,
call you.
when they're unhappy with their broker, you want them to know, like, and trust you, so you're the first one they call.
100%.
So you kind of talked about where Century 21 results is in terms of agent count now. Like, what are the goals? Where do
Where do we
you and the
go?
business want to be in the next 12 months?
Oh my
Knowing that
gosh.
it's been a kind of a crazy year, and if you're listening to this later, 2024 is the year, and actually just over a month and a day ago, was the NAR settlement changes went into effect. Very tumultuous year, but like maybe just tell me,
Well,
what are
we're
the
so
goals?
excited. And I can't wait to tell you because this is huge. And this is why I'm here again, or else we wouldn't even be having this conversation because Terry called me back in. He calls me about every 4 or 5 months, every time he has a project, and he throws me on it. So we have recently just bought a Century 21 in Florida, and that is Century 21 Ocean, Results Ocean. So Terry calls me up and he says, I need you to go find me 4 or 5 mega teams or producers in Florida. We're going to open branch offices and we'll build around those mega teams. And I have been recruiting in Florida now for the past 4 months,
Oh, wow.
and huge teams like 300 million, and it's working. And here's what I have to tell your people that are watching. If you're afraid to pick up the phone and call them, I'll be honest, I've been doing this for 8 years. I have never picked up a phone and called someone that was 100 million. I mean, that's just as intimidating as it can be. Well, let me tell you something. It's not. It's really one of the most comfortable conversations you'll ever have because these people 100% know who they are and what their business is about. And
Right.
if you can make it better, if you can bring something to the table, they're willing to listen because they're no longer at that stage of the game where it's, I'm too busy and don't want to hear from you. So
Right.
that's my experience. So I don't know if you wanted that piece of information thrown in, but it has been really interesting, and we're building Florida. So that's where we're going. And we have 8 offices in Georgia. We've
Yep.
grown them by team offices. So a really high producing agent of ours, we send them in an area that they want to be in and then build around them. And that's how we've done it 8 times over, and it's worked successfully all 8 times.
Right. Well, change creates opportunity, right?
Yes, it does.
And this is the year of change, which means opportunity. And that's a prime
100%.
example. We've heard a lot about M&A being big this year. Another one is just if word's out on the street that there's a local brokerage that is on the rocks or shutting down, that's the perfect. We're hearing
Hmm.
that those campaigns are extremely fruitful. Other ones
Absolutely.
too that were more recently is like when with all the NAR changes, just people working for a brokerage that really isn't feeding them a lot of information and
Right.
there's not a lot of certainty. All of these changes create opportunities for you if you can kind of remove that fear and uncertainty and doubt from these people,
Hmm.
essentially.
And so one of the best pieces of advice I could give to any recruiter out there is when you're experienced, you got some, you don't want to do this at the outset, but once you've kind of gotten your feet wet and you're in there and you're feeling pretty good, I have found it's been very successful to go after the influencer person at a brokerage. The person that's got a lot of Instagrams and a lot of people are liking them and they're just well liked. And then I offer that particular guy or girl a deal they can't refuse, and then the rest kind of follow because the agents are going to call. Let's call him Jack. Agents are going to call Jack and say, Jack, what the heck? Why did you leave? Jack's going to have to defend his position. So it's the greatest mouthpiece you could ever have on the planet. Jack tells why he left. And then they just kind of start, if they get unhappy, they know where to go. They follow Jack.
What is the territory and the niche you're targeting in terms of geographically? What kind of agents? How's the brokerage known? Like, maybe just tell me more about that.
We are full service, more full service than you probably ever imagined. We bring to the table everything: transaction coordinating, contract to close, signs, lot boxes, headshots, business cards, one-on-one coaching, all your CE. I mean, the list is really long. But we do that because we have found that if we take all that minutia off of our agents' backs, they go and sell more. And then it just becomes more profitable for both of us. They like their job better, more money's coming in, everybody's happy. So when I'm looking to target an agent, any of them or work for me, as long as I'd like to bring people in at 3 million. That's our houses around here about 400. So 3 million is probably, you've been in the business for a couple of years, you're getting your feet wet and you're ready to rock and roll. I start there. And then of course, as you do this longer and longer and longer, it becomes much more exciting to go after the big dogs. I personally am targeting the big dogs. But Sierra, she's right around the hallway and she's doing anything between 3 million and 10 million. It's easier, believe it or not, to move someone from a transactional brokerage over to a full service brokerage if they have had the best year they've ever had.
That was going to be my next question a lot of, right, because I'm talking to lots of brokerages and obviously some of the flat fee brokerages that are transaction based have really seen a lot of growth recently. And then I've heard recently from more traditional split model brokerages, we're worried because these people are contacting all our agents, offering cost savings, and we're losing people. For the people in the traditional split model brokerages, how are you competing against that? What's the value to them? How do you position against that so that you're bringing those agents over and not losing them to that model?
Well, generally speaking, an agent will go over to a transactional brokerage once they've arrived. They feel like they know what they're doing, they can handle it on their own, and they don't need anything from the brokerage. And so traditionally, what I've seen is that once you're at the brokerage, a transactional brokerage for about a year, your numbers start to fall off. It's because there's not any support. If they do, they have to pay for it. Nothing is supplied, so everything's having to come out of their pocket. So I have found that yes, it may look really great as you're growing your business to think that you're getting more money in your pocketbook, but in reality, we provide you as a full service brokerage all the things that you need at a much less, it's cheaper. It's because I'm servicing. So my transaction coordinator, where you would probably your transactional brokerage be paying $400 a transaction for, it's not going to cost you anything here. So, or other things like signs or lot boxes and stuff like that. So long story short, when you sit down and really dive into what he's paying for at the transactional brokerage versus what we're giving him and what we can show is the projection of his business based on past people coming from a transactional brokerage to our brokerage, it's really a no-brainer. And it makes them feel like the heavy is off of them because they don't have to deal with it all. They don't have to constantly be taking care of their marketing or taking care of their social media or taking care of all the things that they have to take care of that got them to that successful place. But now it's just too much.
That's kind of the ideal agents. I mean, it sounds like it's producing agents. You mentioned that before, so probably not a lot of new agents. I mean, do you guys bring in new agents? Do you have a training program for that?
Oh,
or do you just really?
Absolutely. Well, in fact, we have a really, really good training program for that. But what we have found is that we have a school. So like if somebody wanted to come as a brand new agent and get their license, they can come to our school. When they graduate, we'll reimburse them for the money on their first transaction, blah, blah, blah. But we try to take in 10 to 15 new agents a quarter. particularly if they're a referral from an agent that's here, a daughter, a
Right.
son, a cousin, a neighbor, or whatever. But we do want new agents. There's an energy that a new agent brings. They're excited about the new career and stuff like that. So you have to have a percentage of those in the company that really make it a balanced situation. And because of who we are able to make a lot of those new agents productive in their first year. But it's
Right.
up to the agent, as we both know.
Sure, of course. And so, how do you find them? What are your sources of recruiting leads for both experienced and new agents? What's working best out there? What are you all focusing on?
We put an advertisement out that if you were to get on social media, if you were interested in getting your license, you could come to either our school or one of the other schools. And then when they came aboard on their first transaction, we would reimburse them for their schooling fees. So that's one way. Another way is we get their home addresses when they have passed the exam. And we have just a templated pretty card that basically tells them all the things that we offer and that we'd love to talk with them, and we send that out, and we get a lot of response from that, a lot more than I would expect to get.
What about experienced agents? How are you finding the kind of the ideal agents? How are you building your list there?
Several different ways, several different variables that I shoot for. Obviously, I mean, don't want to beat a dead horse, but obviously Brokerkit, you basically let them know what MLSs you want, you can suck them straight in from there or send a list. I look for higher producing agents. I look for agents that have been around for anywhere from 5 to more years because they really know. That's just me personally, not the company, but me. And I look for, like I was telling you before, I look for those influencer people at companies, because if you can make a deal that influencer type person can't refuse, a
Hmm.
special deal, an NDA deal, then the
Right.
rest will follow. I usually do a query where I want people that are over 5 million, and then I just call them all. I'll be honest. I'm not very selective. I am selective once I meet them. There are people who
Hmm.
won't cut mustard or whose personalities just, we don't like divas, male or female.
Right. That was gonna be my next question. Like, what is the other thing I've really seen with very successful brokerages is having a strong sense of what their culture is and who's a fit and who's not for that. So,
Hmm.
what would you say that culture is, and how do you determine who's a fit and who's not?
So I think we've grown large enough that the cultural fit proposition is probably wider than your
Hmm.
mom and pop brokerage.
Right.
But I will say that our culture is, we're still very family here. And I know everybody says they're family, and I'm sure lots of us are. But Results was grown from the ground up 28 years ago as not a franchise. And so the founding people are still here. And we are probably one of the highest producing brokerages around. And there's nothing special about us. We don't get better
Right.
homes. We're really feeding our agents all of the information they could ever need. We have 3 non-competing brokers in the office that are Johnny on the spot at all times. And we just really, really support our agents. So an agent that's looking for a high producing, motivating, exciting, and goofy and very down to earth. I mean, we do some of the craziest stuff here you've ever seen in your life. We're just fun, but we're high
Cool.
producers. Yeah.
And so what this is my other favorite question, especially somebody that's talking to so many people and then you see who works out. I mean, putting aside production, because that
Hmm.
absolutely helps, but maybe with new agents that don't have that production history, maybe they seem like they're a cultural fit. What backgrounds or personality traits do you think lead to somebody to be most successful? Do you use like the disc assessment? I know that's pretty popular in
It
real
is.
estate. Are you looking for certain things, or like what, just putting more back to like their
Right.
personality or like even their background, industries they came from, roles, or anything like that?
It's interesting that you say that, because I've talked about this so many times over the last few years, especially with the coaching side of it. And I want to tell you so badly that there is a science behind what personalities, what backgrounds. And I kind of got it. I thought, okay, but then it blows up in my face. So here's what I've learned. The people who I think are real extroverted and come from a sales background and love people and blah blah. I always think, oh, they're going to kill it.
Yep.
And then the guy or the girl that's very introverted and sitting there quietly and maybe isn't quite so outgoing, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be trouble. And I have been wrong on both sides of the fence about 100 times over. It's grit.
Yep.
It's grit. It's
Yep.
internal grit. And it doesn't matter whether you're a science professor or you're a dog walker. If you got grit, you can make it in real estate. You don't got grit, you're going to die on the vine.
And And if you, I mean, the thing that you can't tell from a personality assessment is, do they have a mortgage they got to pay and like four kids that they kind of like they're in college and they got to just put the
Well,
hammer down and make
we
it
did
happen?
the disc test on all the agents for 2 years just so that we could kind of get an
Really
idea. Yes, absolutely. And we really thought that it was going to be the driver or the intuitive that really, really, really was the great agent. It's not.
yep.
It's not. It's
Okay.
actually the intuitive is really important because you're able to read a room and able to read your clients. But it's more of the expresses and the amiables that seem to worm their ways in there better than anybody else when it comes to getting that listing agreement. That and
Interesting.
proven results from the past, of course, you know.
So let's just say you have a list, you're calling them. How do you, I mean, are you trying to get them in for an appointment? Are you doing it in the office? What are you saying to get them interested? How do you kind of take it to the next level, essentially?
So my recruiting's a little different. And what I found from them was that it lacked a sense of realness and that
Mm-hmm.
lacked a sense of honesty. And so I created my own recruiting, and it kind of is I just talk to you as a human. So if I was calling you, I would just say, "Hey Jim, it's Lisa Bowles over here at Century 21 Results. How you doing today?" And
Doing
we can
great.
exactly.
Are we're role playing here?
I
Okay.
might as well. And then, long story short, what ends up happening is I just talk with them. And they tell me how they're doing. I tell them how I try to extend because at first they think I'm a real estate agent because I'm calling from
Mm-hmm.
Century 21 Results and
Right.
maybe calling from a listing or maybe calling off of something. So that I want to extend that period of time where they're not uptight as long as possible, talking about things in the community or whatever. And sometimes I have to start that, and it feels awkward, but it usually flows. Like when I ask you how you're doing, you're going to say, "I'm great, Lise, how are you?"
Really
Right?
good. Yeah,
Well,
fantastic.
and I'm going to say, "Oh," and you say, "How are you?" Right? And I say, "Oh, I'm great." And I come up with something that's real. It can never be a lie, but something that happened this morning. Fine, now that it's finally stopped raining for the last 2 weeks. She lives in my community. She's going to relate. "Oh my gosh, I know. It's been raining like crazy." Or I spilled coffee all over me. Oh my, and we start this rapport of just two real estate agents in our community having a phone conversation that neither one of us really know what's going to happen. And then once it starts to wind down a little bit, I say, "Well, the reason I'm calling you, Jim, is I'm actually the recruiter over at Century 21 Results. And what we are able to bring to the table for our agents is absolutely unheard of in the industry. And I would love an opportunity to tell you about it." And you're going to say, "Oh, Lisa, thank you so much. But I love my broker. I mean, he pays my mortgage for me. I could never leave him." I actually had that.
I'm happy where I am, Lisa. I'm good.
And then I
My
say, "I can,"
mortgage is paid.
right? And I say, and then I go, "I completely understand that. Absolutely love that. In fact, we've got many, many agents here that would, that are as loyal to us as that. But life happens, right? And
It does.
so I would love to be able to invite you over, show you what it looks like here, introduce you to my staff, walk you through, show you what it feels and looks like here. And that way, in the event of anything happens, you already have a place to go to. And generally speaking, people will usually put me off a couple months because they're really busy right now. But they
Mm-hmm.
usually will come over to check it out under those pretenses. And once I get
Yep.
them in front of me, 75% of them come aboard. That sounds really
Okay.
cocky,
Okay.
doesn't it?
I mean, so there's right. So it is a little bit of a math equation, right?
It
At
is
scale, especially if you're
100%.
full time. Let's just start with the list. Like, do you have a set number of calls you're trying to make a day or contacts or like what are your activity goals for the week?
So I don't do that anymore, but Sierra does, and I set them for her. So,
Yep.
which burnout is huge. You can have a really, really, really great recruiter, but if you are making her call for 8 hours a day, you're going to have a really
Yeah.
great recruiter for a week.
Whose brain is fried and she's out.
She's gone. When you're first starting off, I suggest 30 phone calls a day,
Okay.
and that's people you're talking to. So we don't count people who go to voicemail.
So 30 conversations a day.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's hard. That's big one. Okay, so usually I start them off even less than that. Let's just do 10, and then it's 15, and then it's 20. But ideally, once they got their feet wet and they're rolling, they need to talk to 30 people a day. Out of the 30 people they talk to, if you do it my way with my little spiel and really getting to know them, whatever, you
right.
usually will get about 30% that would agree to having a one-on-one conversation with you in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Out of that, once we make the appointment, half of those are going to cancel, and
Yep.
it's upwards to 58%. Now, if you can grab them before they cancel by texting them the night before and say, hey, I'm really looking forward to meeting with you, they're going to let you know then that they're going to cancel. But now
Yep.
they don't have to feel, but they're not running from you yet. So then you can say, well, how about we do it the next week at the same time? They will usually always say yes because there's no pressure now. And then generally speaking, half of those will actually show up.
Back to the calls, right? If it's 30 conversations, what are you saying for a connect rate, and how many calls is it to have 30 conversations? Because, I mean, you're probably getting a lot of voicemails in there.
Mostly voicemails. I give them the options that if they don't want to leave a voicemail, because 90% of the recorded messages are, if you want a faster response, text me in the real
Mm-hmm.
estate world, that they can text. And you almost always get a response to a text in
So,
today's age.
so you try to call,
Always.
and then if you don't get it, then you don't leave a voicemail, you just text.
Yes.
And
But I will
then,
tell you this, I've done the numbers on leaving a voicemail versus not leaving a voicemail also on the response rate. If you leave a voicemail and tell them what you're calling about, if you leave a voicemail saying, hey, I have some couple questions I'd love to talk with you about because they think you're a real estate agent because you're calling from
right.
your brokers, or not leaving a voicemail at all. And I can tell you that if you're going to leave a voicemail, you want to leave the I've got a couple questions or ideas. I have a couple questions or ideas I want to throw at you. If you got a second, this is not something that's urgent. Give me a call at your earliest convenience. I'd love to throw this at you and see what you think. That gets a lot of response.
And do they call you back, or do they text you back, or how do you hear back from them?
Usually they call you back.
Because it's like an open loop that you have, right?
Right.
And then they're like, "Oh, ideas, interesting. I want to hear about the ideas." It doesn't sound like a
Exactly.
pitch.
So if you leave a
Yeah.
message, they'll usually call you back.
One of my theories is people stopped leaving voicemails because they didn't work, but they actually work better now. And the reason
Yes.
is because on an iPhone, it transcribes it. And
Yes.
you can just scan it real quick with looking at it. Whereas
Yep.
before you had to actually listen to it
Mm-hmm.
and it took more time. And now it's like you can just look at it real quickly, see what it is. And if it looks interesting, they
Right.
probably see it typed out.
Right.
I have some ideas. They see that they're like, oh, interesting. Whereas like before they might have had to actually listen to it and they would have been less likely.
Right. Well, I'll tell you this too, and we've run the numbers on this for many, many years. You can text, you can email, you can social media, you can do all of these things, and they're all helpful. We need to be doing them all, right? But I have maybe had two people in 8 years and, 700 agents that have responded to or come aboard because of a text message. You have to pick up the phone. You're not going
Yeah.
to get an agent over without having a real life conversation, because you're just 9 million people out there texting them constantly about everything from new socks that
Right.
have just hit the market to whatever. They just don't respond to anything
So
that they don't know.
do you only use text in follow up to say a voicemail or after you've talked? Or do you ever use it in the initial outreach? Okay. No, that makes sense.
I
Yeah.
don't want them to
So
know who I am until they've heard me talk about it. Because if
so
they know who I am, they're never going to respond to me.
but then they'll see call Century 21 results on the caller ID, but they assume it's another agent calling about a listing, so they'll answer. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people. I mean, what I really commonly see is people that just want to send emails, lots of emails. And I think at one point that might have worked, but not so well these days, right? I mean, and
After
at the
my
end of the
second
day,
call, after the second time I've called someone and I cannot get a hold of them, they will not answer their phones, they will not return a call, then I'll
yeah.
send them the email.
And so you get them into the office. How do you close them?
So I do it all myself now, but that's not how most brokerages do it. Usually the recruiter will get them in the door and then the broker takes it from there. I find that if you will just take them somewhere comfortable, really comfortable, because a lot of times they're there because something's not right with their own brokerage. I mean, they won't tell you that. They're just coming by in case something happens in the future just to see what my broker's like. But in reality, they're not going to come to our door unless they've had ideas or they are looking or something's gone wrong in their current life. So I take them to somewhere that's really comfortable. We have a lounge, a boardroom works, office door with where you can close it works. Not something stuffy, not something uncomfortable. I don't want a principal's office. And then I just start, how are you? Tell me about it. Kind of like you've done on this podcast. And I allow them to and I ask questions and I just spend a good 15, 20 minutes just getting to know who they are. And I'll tell them, I'm interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing me. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And I'd love to just get to know you. And I love people. So we get to know each other on that real personal level. Triathlon, grandchildren. I mean, it could be anything. Menopause, for crying out loud. And then, because I've already talked to them on the phone, they already know what we're doing. So then I just kind of go back I hand them a list of everything that we bring to the table. They've already heard about most of it. And then we kind of go through the list and I describe things and explain to them how we go about it. And then I literally take them for a tour and I introduce them to all of the different staff members in the office. And my staff is so well aware that when I walk by with someone they don't know, they are smiles. And then right before they leave, I take them to the front. I ask the question, I know you're not signing up with me today. In fact, I think you were weird if you did. However, in a perfect world, what would it take to get you to sign on that dotted line today? And they will tell you their pain at that moment. They will absolutely.
Right.
Well, if you could go 5% higher on the split. Well, if you could lower the cap to $5,000, or well, if you could guarantee that I would get such amount of leads. Well, now I know. Now I know exactly what it's going to take to get them in the door. And I tell them, and I say, I'm going to go talk to Terry. He's our owner broker. See what we can come up with. Give me 48 hours. That also shocks them because no recruiter wants to wait for anything. So that's a
Hmm.
big one. I'm taking it to the big boss, going to come up with a plan. So I say, let me talk to Terry and give me 48 hours and I'll get back with you. And then in 48 hours, I usually will text them and say, hey, I've talked to Terry. I think we got a really good deal for you. Can I give you a call at 2 o'clock? So now I get to touch them again.
And then hopefully they sign and then they're joining.
Well,
And
if you
so,
can get close to that, whatever it is they want, even if you can't, if you can say, look, I can't lower your cap by 5,000, but I can tell you what, we'll make your first 4 transactions 100%. And if whatever, if you can get close to whatever it is they asked for, they're kind of obligated to come aboard, aren't they?
yeah, I told you what they would accept, right? So if you get somewhat close to it, even though not 100%, most people would, right? The
Mm-hmm.
reasonable person would.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there are some unreasonable people out there
Oh
that you
yeah.
run into every now and again. But yeah,
Million
most
dollars,
people.
I'll come right now, Lee.
Reciprocity. When you give something to them, they feel obligated to give something
Mm-hmm.
back. Okay, then that's recruiting, right? Like now, how do you, and obviously this is different new versus experience. What's the process to bring them on board in terms of onboarding, that first 30, 60, 90 days? And I'm sure it's different swim lanes for kind of, new versus experience. We pretty consistently hear that that's a really important time for people new to your brokerage, and it's very indicative of their success later. How
Yes.
do y'all approach that?
So onboarding is extremely crucial for, particularly with higher producing agents. They have to know that you know how to do this streamlined because they don't want to stop their business. Nobody wants to close out their business. I keep saying brand names at Dollar Tree real estate firm to start over here. They just don't, you can't do that and function in life. So we have to let them know that we know how this game gets played and we know how to do it efficiently and make it happen. So here's what we do. The minute that they sign their documents, they immediately go to my onboarder, and she's in the Philippines. She's a VA, and she does website, email address, MLSs, gets all the backend systems, the DocuSign stuff, all of that up and running. And then she sends out an email to our broker and says, this agent is ready for next steps. Our broker immediately, and we're talking hours here, 5 or 6, because this agent has to be able to go out and do business. And in Georgia, your MLS goes away when you leave and it starts up again at another office. It doesn't stay. So it's a big deal. So we have to do this so quickly. So Ella handles all that. She sends a notice to our broker. This agent's ready for next steps. Our broker calls immediately, sets up an appointment with them via Zoom and starts going. She's also their coach and starts going over all of the things that they're going to need right now, how to get in the front door, how to turn off the alarm, how to get in the printers, So long story short, the actual physical onboarding part is done for us, all of it within 48 hours. They can completely work within 2 hours, but onboard within 48 hours. Now, I know you didn't ask for this, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. This period of time between the day they come aboard, and I like 6 weeks, we call it the honeymoon period.
Right.
The longer we can stretch this honeymoon period out where they are singing our praises, because they're justifying and defending their reasons for coming here to all the other agents out there, the more likely you are to get a stream of agents coming in behind you. So we do
Right.
several things. Number one, Terry calls them, our owner broker, and has a conversation with them about a week in after they're not so overwhelmed. Then about 3 weeks later, we send to their house a flare box. It's got a bottle of champagne with the logo on it. It's got a hat. It's got T-shirts. It's got a cup in it. We mail that out to them. Then at about a month in, then Terry brings them up to the front of the thing, totally introduces them, gives them the background, gives them an opportunity to really share themselves. So long story short, this agent feels like a rock star for about 6 straight weeks. And now I'm telling this rock star agent, hey, if you want to go talk to the past Dollar Tree agents and tell them, then I can put them underneath you and you could earn residuals off of them
So when do you bring that up? Like at what
after
point?
they
Because
sign.
so the second you do, okay. So
Because
um,
if they've been referred to by another agent, by telling them that ahead of time, they know that the other agent that referred them is going to get paid off of them.
okay, cool. Okay, so then that's the initial kind of onboarding period, the honeymoon period, so to speak. So then how do you, beyond that, like, the thing we hear pretty consistently is just keeping people engaged, whether it be kind of office or brokerage level events. And when in new agents, it's probably coaching. Maybe with the heavy
Right,
hitters you're hiring, it's less of a need. I don't know if
right.
there's, but maybe they like to be in masterminds with other heavy
Mhm.
hitters. Like, what do you do to keep them kind of like engaged and in the brokerage beyond the honeymoon period?
So we call them developmental classes. We have probably 3 a day, whether that is social media, creating amazing videos, or it's marketing. It's separate for us. Social media and marketing are two different departments. Or any discussions. We have Talk to Terry. You can ask any question you want to. It's an hour every week. We have just so many roundtable discussions. Then we have small groups, what we call. And so it's people of like minded production levels that are doing business the same. Like, we have a group that are really relational, so they get together and share their ideas. We have a group that are online lead guys and girls, and they get together. So we have so many different opportunities here to keep them engaged. And then we have a really great staff that helps keep them motivated as well. I mean, there's a lot of rah-rahs. I mean, we got money guns going off when you close your first deal. We've got money coming out of vendors' pockets. So if you want to stand up and tell us what you do at our sales meetings, you got to bring a gift card for an agent. And then any successes of the agents, we give them these gift cards. Well, the vendors started competing against each other. So they used to be $25 gift cards. Now they're $100 and $150 gift cards. Like, heck yeah.
Yeah, they're a little more interested to come to the meeting too.
Yes, yes, yes. But it's great because the agent, if they answer a question right in a sales meeting, Terry will say pick 1 through 3, and it's 3 gift cards. So they get $100 gift card to Amazon or whatever.
And so when do you know that you made a great hire, and how would you know? Like, what would you want to see?
I know we made a great hire when their numbers either stay the same or continue to go up. Now, we're super entrepreneurial, probably more so than any other brokerage I've ever heard of or been around. So, the first thing that is going to happen is we're going to help them dive into their business and find out where they're spending money and they shouldn't be, where they're spending time and they shouldn't be. If they want us to, we'd never do this without them wanting us to, but really getting them optimized. We actually have someone here who does that for a living. They optimize businesses. So they'll go in and they'll see if you're using your CRM system to its full advantage and that sort of thing. So Dusty will literally go in if they want them to and go through their business and help them to make more money, have more time to be able to be more productive. And usually they are. So I don't know what the number is that lets us know whether we're doing a good job or not, but literally I would say that they become
Yeah.
more productive.
Yeah, there you go. No, that's a good answer. I mean, that kind of covers all my questions around the talent funnel. You've been in the business a while, you've kind of progressed, you've got this down. We have a lot of people that are listening to this that are maybe a little earlier in their journey in real estate into from sales into leadership and then from leadership into kind of recruiting and
Yeah.
whatnot. Like maybe think back to what your former self was. What do you know now that you wish you knew then that would have just suddenly made things kind of easier?
Just being me and not trying to be something I'm not. Just having conversations. It's very intimidating when you first start to pick up I'm not even in real estate. So it's very intimidating to pick up a phone and talk to a real estate professional. And the only thing I know is my broker. And the only thing brokers know is their brokerage for the most part, right? I mean,
Right.
they know their home. So I guess the biggest thing is all the scripts and all that this is what you have to say and this is what you need to do and this is how you sell it. I found all of that's great if you memorize it and you have it in your brain in the back. But it's really just about, hey, we're wanting to grow our company over here and we're doing some pretty fabulous stuff. And I'd love for you to come take a look and a real conversation of what does your business look like? Where do you want to go? Do we fit? Can we mutually benefit each other? Real, honest conversations with real people. Real estate agents aren't scary. Even if they're at 300 million, they're just not scary. They're just people.
I love it. That covers most of my questions for today. Like, where could our listeners find you online if they had questions for you later?
Well, I have a company. It's called GameChangerRecruiting.com. I don't know if I'm going to do a fearless plug here, but that I coach all this and I've been very successful with it and I'm the cheapest out there. So you can go to GameChangerRecruiting.com or I'm at Century 21 Results.
Love it.
Instagram, Facebook.
All the socials. Thanks, Lisa, for joining us today.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciated your insight and kind of wisdom from lots of experience out there in the real estate recruiting world. And also, of course, thank you to our listeners for tuning in today. Hopefully you got some nuggets out of this. Think about what you can put into practice, right? It's not just listening. What can you put into practice? Think about that. What are you going to do next week based on what you heard from Lisa here? Also, we hope to have you back for our next episode where we'll have more insights and wisdom on how you can grow your brokerage by improving your agent recruiting and retention. Thanks so much and have a great day.